It's it's games like this that make me not want to watch football anymore.
Here we go, Steelers, here we go. Pittsburgh's going to the Super Bowl. Here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to Steel Nation. This is going to be my review of the Week 11 game between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cleveland Browns. And I'm going to be honest, this might have been the worst game of football I have ever seen in my life. It was awful. I don't even want to talk about the outcome just yet, because that outcome was pretty bad, but the whole game itself, on both sides of the ball, were atrocious. And I'm not talking about our defense. Our defense was serviceable. Our defense was fine. We held them to 13 points. That's great. Our offense, though, and their offense looked bad. So let's get into it. I want to start, first off, highlighting a couple of things that happened during the game, namely Jaylen Warren's 74-yard touchdown run. That should have been the momentum we needed to propel this team forward throughout the game, but it didn't happen. I mean, you had constant misfires from Kenny Pickett, the consistent stuffing of Najee Harris on the run, and let's look here at our receivers. We had our receiving, George Pickens, 6 targets, 4 receptions for a total of 38 yards. Not to mention Deontay Johnson, who is supposed to be our wide receiver 1, had 8 attempts with 2 receptions for 16 yards. Jaylen Warren had that exact same amount of yards on 3 receptions, which he caught all 3 of. This game was disappointing, to say the least, especially after watching what happened earlier in the season against the Browns. That was a good game. It was a sloppy game. It was a messy game, but it was fun to watch. This game was not. There was 1 sack from the Steelers defense. There were several sacks from the Browns defense, some of which should have resulted in safeties on Kenny Pickett, including on the first drive. The Steelers could not get anything going on the first drive, and Kenny Pickett was sacked in the end zone twice, I think, which both of those should have been safeties, but they were not called. So, I don't know. As I already said, you had that Jaylen Warren 74-yard touchdown run, but aside from that, not much was able to be put into motion on the ground. Sure, Jaylen Warren did a lot on the ground, but that was not able to be converted into anything. Once again, our total offensive yardage for the day was less than Cleveland's. We had a total of 249. They had a total of 259. So we were 10 yards behind them, and that makes sense. We lost by 3 points. We lost by a game-winning field goal, which, of course we did. Of course we did. And speaking of that game-winning field goal, I want to talk about that last play the Steelers had. It was a Hail Mary. When you do a Hail Mary, you try to put it as far down the field as you can. You got 3 defenders lined up on 3 wide receivers lined up on the right, 1 on the left, and they all just run. And Pickett, for some reason, decided to throw it 10 yards down the field to Pickett, who then laterals it back to Johnson, who goes nowhere with it. So, I don't understand the whole lateral concept. I've never once seen it work in the NFL. Why do teams keep doing it aside from, oh, hey, this is a fun trick? When it comes to a Hail Mary, just put it down. Or, run 4 verticals and just send all 4 of your receivers as far down the field as possible, all spread out. Now, obviously, on that last play, the Browns are going to have all of their defenders spread out everywhere. And if that's the case, that's when you have your running back run up through the middle and try to get it. But they didn't. And now, obviously, I'm not a coach. I don't know anything about play calling. It just drives me nuts seeing what this team could be, and then we just fail. On the Kenny Pickett aspect of things, on 28 attempted throws, he completed 15 of those. That's a little bit more than half. It's not terrible. 106 yards, though, is pretty bad because a good chunk of those completed passes were screen passes behind the line of scrimmage. That's like me playing Madden levels of, I don't want to say incompetence, but bad reads. And it's not like they can't work, but when you're constantly doing screen pass, check down right there, nothing happens. Several pitchbacks to a running back that go nowhere. This team is a run-first offense. But the running does not work, it seems, when you're throwing it behind the line. When you're pitching it to a running back behind the line, they don't seem to go anywhere. So either run it like a normal run play or learn to throw it deep. And now at this point, the Facebook pages are going nuts. I'm seeing people saying Pickett is a terrible quarterback and Johnson is a terrible wide receiver and this and that. But what I'm not seeing a lot of anymore is people complaining about Matt Canada's offense. And maybe it's because we've had 2 good games since he's been back on the field, but I don't think that is enough to say, oh yeah, Matt Canada's not the problem. I still think Matt Canada is the problem. I still think we need to bring in a better offensive coordinator to call these games. Somebody like a Josh McDaniels, who was a terrible head coach for the Raiders, but when he was with the Patriots, he was an amazing offensive coordinator. But even if not that, bring in somebody temporary. I would love to see Big Ben come in and be the offensive coordinator for the rest of the season, because Ben knew what he was doing. Why else do you think that he was so successful? I mean, obviously he's a really good quarterback, but as a quarterback, you also need to know when to call audibles, and Ben did it very well. Now, I'm also seeing a lot of people go off on Mike Tomlin for right now, and to a degree, I understand. He doesn't fire Matt Canada. He doesn't seem to be getting a hold of his players. Attitudes are still running wild through the locker room. The only person whom I've seen who has spoken out about this has been Najee Harris, who, now I don't want you to take this as gospel because I saw this on the Facebook page, but it was an article from CBS that was reposted to the Facebook group that Najee Harris said that some of the people in the locker room do not put the team first, and you know what? I understand that makes sense. Not that I agree with it, but it makes sense from what I've heard from George Pickens. Some of these guys are all self-important. They think that they are more important than the team, and that is that's what causes what Antonio Brown went through to happen. And so these guys really need to learn to be a part of this team if they want to survive, if they want to win. But some of them don't want to do that, and it seems like that could be a reason that we are failing, especially in the George Pickens camp. Man caught a good chunk of his of what he was thrown, but it wasn't a lot, and he didn't make anything happen with what he had. Let's flip it over to the Browns side of the ball for a second, because the Browns, they threw the ball a lot. They had their rookie quarterback Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and he was just putting the ball through the air as much as possible. He threw it 43 times, only completed 24 passes. That's still more than half. He had 1 interception, whereas Pickett had none. But when you both have 0 touchdowns, it really doesn't matter. On the run, as I said, they had a total of 96 yards on the rush. Most of those came from K. Hunt, who had 12 attempts for 36 yards. You look that over, Jaylen Warren, who had 9 attempts for 129 yards, and you can see who has the better running backs. Though, also, if you go to Najee Harris, he also had 12 yards, just like Hunt and Ford, and had 35 yards, which is basically the same as both Hunt and Ford for the Browns. So, in terms of rushing, the standout player was Jaylen Warren, specifically because of his 74-yard run. In fact, why don't we subtract that 74-yard run from his total and see what the other 8 runs measured out as? 55. with 8 carries, when you subtract the 1 carry for 74 yards, Jaylen Warren had 54 yards on the ground. That is 6.87 yards per carry on 8 carries. Jaylen Warren is an incredible runner. He is an incredible halfback. And the fact that he is not getting as many attempts as Najee Harris has been getting is frustrating to me. Because of the two, Jaylen Warren is the better running back. Now, Najee Harris, I understand he was a very high draft pick for us. And to be fair, Najee Harris has been getting better throughout the season. He is so much better than he started off the season, and I'm no longer saying we trade Najee. I like having them both on the field. I just think that Warren needs to get more reps, and he needs to get the ball more often because he's producing with it. He is a much more physical player, and with his physicality, he is beating defenders much more often. He's hurdling defenders. He's throwing them to the ground. He's breaking tackles where Najee runs into a pile of people, is able to push the whole pile a couple yards. But that doesn't do much when you've got Jaylen Warren out here who's able to run around the pile of people and go for the end zone. That's just my opinion on this whole thing. I think Jaylen Warren should be getting the majority of snaps in comparison to Najee Harris, though I think that they are both great and they both complement each other. Najee Harris is really good for short yardage gains, for first down, for third and goals, and for third and short distances to get first downs. Jaylen Warren is good when you need to cover a lot of distance quickly, which is why he's used a lot more in the late game, because you have to get to the goal line faster, and Jaylen Warren can push the sticks as far as possible. However, the running game is not where the Browns excelled. It's the passing game. As I said, Dorian Thompson-Robinson threw 43 passes. 24 of those were caught. And now let's look at their receivers. Moore, he had 7 targets, 6 receptions for 60 yards. All right, Njoku, 15 targets, 7 receptions for 56. Amari Cooper, 8 targets, 4 completions, so about half, 34 yards. All 3 of those were better than, or almost better than George Pickens, our top receiver on the day, with 38 yards. So, the first 2 guys beat our number 1 receiver on the day by almost double both times. That should be a red flag to any coach and any fan. We need to open up the passing game more. And I don't think it's because our players aren't getting open. I think it's because the play calling sucks. It's abysmal. And we need a change. Either Kenny Pickett needs to start calling more audibles, or offensive coordinator Matt Canada needs to go to Canada and leave us alone. We need to bring in a new offensive coordinator. Maybe we can change things around going forward. The rest of the game, though, it was ugly. I streamed the game. I had 40 people in my stream for a good chunk of the game, but it was so boring. I was tired of the game by the time the fourth quarter came around. I just wanted it to be over with. And that last drive, which resulted in the field goal to win, which was awful. Because by the time the Browns got their first penalty, we had already basically run the clock down to nothing. The Browns could have gone that entire game without a single penalty. And we just kept getting slammed with penalties. Holding, pass interference, offsides, roughing the passer, all that sort of stuff. The roughing the passer call was baffling to me because Kenny Pickett got laid out in the end zone and there was no roughing the passer called on it, but a very less violent thing happens later on to Thompson-Robinson. Flag. Roughing the passer. See, the NFL has gotten so willy-nilly with roughing the passer calls that it's become when you get a roughing the passer call, it's not because they're actually roughing the passer. It now feels that the refs have placed bets on these teams, and these roughing the passer calls are just their excuse to punish a team that they bet on or that they bet against. And I'm at the point now, I'm honestly questioning the integrity of these refs. I have for some time, but it's getting worse. These calls are getting worse, especially when it comes to roughing the passer. I say all that to say this game was abysmal. I am so glad that it's over and I don't have to worry about it anymore. Coming up on Sunday the 26th, we have two big things. For one, we face the Cincinnati Bengals in Cincinnati, who do not have their starting quarterback either. So let's see what happens. And for two, it's my birthday. So come on out to the stream. We're going to be celebrating my 22nd birthday, and hopefully the Steelers win against the Cincinnati Bengals. If they decide to actually come out of their shells for that game, it's going to be fun. It's going to be awesome, and I guarantee you guys will end up getting to see my mom again, because she is always coming in and out of the room while I'm streaming. Also, I want to talk about, real quick before we leave, the Steelers chicken play of the game. You know what it is. It's the Jaylen Warren 74-yard touchdown. I came up with that during the stream, and anytime that there is a really big play, got a rubber chicken, we boop it. And so, who knows what the Steelers chicken play of the game for Sunday will be. Thank you guys so much for watching. I've been your host, Brian, and as always, go Steelers.